Good evening, my name is Janelle, Olisea with the Stanford Daily.
And I'm Mark Allen Crew.
And tonight we welcome you to the ASSU presidential debate with candidates Christian Sanchez, Amira, Dehmani, and Sophia Danielpour. We'll be talking to the candidates about the most pressing and salient issues affecting the university and its student body. The design of the debate will involve 3 question categories. Each candidate will receive 60 seconds to respond to each question and will be alerted when 10 seconds remain. The candidates will respond in random order for each question. The candidates were informed of the debate categories before the debate, however, they were not shown the specific questions. Each candidate will have the first 90 seconds for an opening statement, and we will go in the order you are sitting. So Amira, let's start with you.
Hi everybody, my name is Amira Dehmani, and I'm running for ASSU Executive President, along with Aiden, who couldn't be here today. But we are so excited to be here to debate today. This year has been a wild one. We've seen amazing strides in student activism with the unionization efforts of the graduate students, the restoration of the shopping express. We've even seen the Stanford Hospital have a designated and private space for survivors. But we continue to have issues on this campus that are affecting us all. The N&O line is not back, administration is not contributing to social initiatives, and we continue to see RAs not being paid their fair share. Me and Aiden will have solutions to these problems. You'll hear them today, and I'm very excited to continue talking about that, to debate with my fellow candidates. It's a very interesting event that we haven't had in a really long time. So I'm very excited to have this conversation today and for all of you to hear my solutions. Thank you.
Sophia, 90 seconds for your opening statement.
Thank you all for coming. My name is Sophia, and I'm here because Stanford has a crisis of community. My freshman year, pre-COVID, Stanford had a vibrant, funky, irreverent culture driven by fun and inclusive student communities. Today, that's gone. We know that it's harder than ever to find community on this campus. And frankly, there's a reason for this. Stanford admin has done everything possible to destroy the organic communities that students built. It's time to bring fun back to this campus. I've never run for ASSU before. I'm not doing this to complete some Stanford political career. I'm doing this because I'm upset at what Stanford has become. And I've decided to take action to solve it. Kyle and I have extensive experience running student organizations and planning events. And we know from firsthand experience how admin bureaucracy gets in the way of fun time and time again. That's why we've taken our personal experiences and a lot of research to craft an extensive, data-driven, researched 10-page plan of how to solve the problems that student government frankly hasn't addressed. It's time that students get what they deserve from Stanford, and this spring, fun strikes back.
Thank you, hello everybody. My name is Christian Sanchez. I'm the current ASSU Vice President, and I'm running with Gurman Bahia. Most of you may know her as Gurman. So I guess just to reiterate what my fellow candidates here have said, that there are a lot of pressing issues here at Stanford, and they need to be approached tactfully. And there's been a lot of issues with administration, and in the capacity that I've been in, we've been working extensively with administration to move the needle on many issues. And as Amira has mentioned, that's the reinstatement of the shopping express, which is going to be running on a pilot. There's been other movements and other things that we've been tackling as well. And Daryl and I have been going to dining hall week after week, hearing from students and hearing what the issues are. And our platform, Gurman and I, is based on what student concerns are, what we hear on the streets, and what we hear in the dining halls. And so that's our approach, and that's how we plan on making Stanford a better place in partnership with the administration to work together to make sure that Stanford is a better place for everybody. I know there's large social life issues, and there's a lot of bureaucracy that's involved with that, a lot of red tape, and it takes time, and it takes time, and it takes advocacy, and it takes the right approach to make sure that we're discussing with the administration to get to where we want to be. Thank you.
Thank you, candidates. The first category will be housing and transportation, and we will start with you, Sophia. Many undergraduate students have criticized Stanford's implementation of the neighborhood system. Despite high amounts of funding, neighborhood events are often unattended, and many students say they're disinterested. What are your thoughts on the neighborhood system, and what would you advocate for related to it if on the ASSU exec team?
Thank you for the question. I think the neighborhood system is just not working for students. To be honest, we know it's not going away, even though it was implemented without any student feedback and against the vast majority of students' wishes. But at this point, we just need to find a way to make the neighborhoods work for students. They promised community, and community is not being delivered. So there's a couple things I would do. First is we need to reform neighborhood funding. Currently, it's inaccessible, non-transparent, students don't know how to access it, and it's not going towards events that students want. Secondly, we need to create neighborhood common spaces. We have neighborhoods, but they're really just restrictions on where students can live, and nothing to do with how to bring students together in community spaces. We need to make sure that there are spaces where students can join together. And third, we need to make sure that student initiatives are being supported by neighborhood funds, by neighborhood programming, and all of those things to support the organic, student-led communities that we enjoyed pre-COVID, such as the themed houses that we should bring back.
Thank you. Christian?
That's an issue that I've heard time and time again out in the dining halls and hearing what students have to say, especially the lack of community that's being brought about. And in relation to funding, we have been in conversations that are going to help with administration to help students access these funds, create relevant programming with student input, and allow students to have the community that they desire. And that's work that Daryl and I have been working on here in these last few months, and that's something that I would definitely strive for, to continue these conversations to give students the community that they would like to have.
Thank you. Amira?
Yeah. The neighborhood system has been very contentious. I was on Frosh Council when it was brought in, and I can tell you we were not happy campers when that happened. And it actually came 10 years earlier than it was supposed to, because they figured that COVID was a great time to just change everything about the campus. And one of the things that came along with doing something 10 years early is they didn't have the infrastructure to actually teach people about it. They didn't teach them how to get neighborhood funds. They didn't teach them about the different avenues for funding. They didn't teach RAs how to access the councils. And that's one of the things that I think they need to do. I'm an RA, I've worked with the neighborhood system, and we've created amazing events for my dorm to create a really great community. That's something that needs to be expanded. The neighborhood councils need to be better, need to actually have more representatives. Half of them don't even have a representative from every house. RAs don't know how to access the funds or host an event. So things like that are what need to happen for the neighborhood system, which isn't going away, to be bolstered and more accessible, because RAs really run this campus, so if they know how to do it, then it'll be better.
Moving on. The return of the Shopping Express line will begin in early May, following months of student advocacy. Given the time constraints surrounding the pilot's return and ridership this academic year, do you plan to advocate for the continuation of the program, and what are your thoughts on transportation options at Stanford in general? Amira, we will start with you.
Yeah, so the Shopping Express and the N&O line were kind of my babies last year when I was running for Senate. And I'm so excited that the Shopping Express is being brought back. We still don't see the N&O line, but we'll talk about that later. The Shopping Express is here for an entire pilot, so it'll be here for an entire year. Now, over the summer is probably a tricky time, but one thing we can do next year for fall is to really get students talking, get them excited about the Shopping Express. We have an entire generation of new students, new frosh, new transfers who can use this. If we can show that the Shopping Express line has ridership that's crazy off the charts, they have to expand it. If we can show that people are using it on the weekends to get around, not just to the shopping center, but to Palo Alto, around campus, they have to bring back the N&O line. If we overwhelm the system, they can't not expand it more. Thank you.
Christian?
Yeah, so working with the GSC, and they led a lot of that initiative to bring back, to just in transportation in general and affordability, but affordability is not the topic, and Shopping Express being brought back. I was definitely one with working in the budget process meetings and discussing the N&O lines and advocating for Shopping Express to be returned. The ridership is something that definitely will be something that needs to be focused on for the future, and that's definitely something that working with the GSC and making sure graduate students, transfer students, new students, everybody understands the operation, where it goes, what the accessibility is for them. I feel that that's definitely going to help build that ridership and help take it to the next level and help implement it permanently. And that will definitely make case for the N&O lines to come back to help with safety and students getting around campus in a more advantageous way. Thank you.
Sophia?
Transportation transportation is definitely a huge issue on campus, and to be honest, it's an equity issue, an accessibility issue, and just generally a safety issue. First, we need to expand transportation options to get on campus. As my fellow roommates have said, the shopping line express is super important, also expanding the N&O line, and it's an accessibility issue of how to get off campus. Second is there's transportation issues on campus. You've all seen the construction that goes on that makes getting around campus so difficult, and that was done without any student feedback and against all student needs. We need to make sure that admin listens to what students need for transportation on campus as well. And thirdly, transportation is a huge safety issue. You've seen how helpful Fiveshare has been in promoting student safety and making sure that students can get home late at night. But the issue is Fiveshare is very underfunded and understaffed. And as part of my time as exec, I would make sure that Fiveshare would get the help that it needs from Stanford admin to make sure that transportation is safe for students.
Many graduate students say affordability is one of their #1 concerns. Given that none of you running right now are graduate students, what issues do you see as chief concerns for grad students, and what do you see as the ASSU's role in addressing them? Christian, we will start with you.
Yeah, so we've been working a lot with the Graduate Student Council on affordability, especially under their Bill of Affordability. And so they've highlighted many issues, are their stipends, their accessibility to food, and the food pantry is definitely another issue, and advocating in the same space in unison as a unified ASO, as a unified front, has been a tremendous help to getting the needle moved on a lot of issues, especially like the shopping express, which is going to be able to help with the accessibility to affordable groceries and affordable items that graduate students need, and especially with the high rent that they're paying, it definitely becomes an issue. And so working with them and continuing to work with them in partnership and making sure that the Graduate Student Union as well is also being pushed and advocated for as well, is going to allow for, you know, for those issues to be brought to light, especially with the administration, if we're all advocating together.
Amira?
I think there's 3 really large issues with the graduate students that they're facing. The first is transportation. They're not able to get to their homes, which many of them live off campus, and the ability to get home to East Palo Alto, to San Francisco, to not Stanford because the rent is insanely high here. That is something they need. So bringing back the shopping express, bringing back the N&O, is going to help that, as well as their Cal Go passes, which the administration took away this year. Also, is their rent is too damn high. You've probably heard them say that in their chants at their union rallies. The rent here is absurd, especially for graduate students having to pay 50% plus of their stipends on rent. That is insane. That means they can't afford food. That means they can't afford to help their children. So the rent is too high, transportation isn't there, and they're not getting stipends that increase with inflation. That's what the graduate students need. And the ASSU can help advocate for that and work against union busting, which MTL is already trying to do.
So, as you mentioned, I'm not a grad student, but my campaign is entirely about getting admin to serve what students need, and grad students are saying that admin is not serving them, and that's exactly what I would fight for as exec. I believe in listening to exactly what grad students say they want, which is why my platform supports the Graduate Workers Union, and would support 4 main initiatives that they want. First is affordable living at Stanford. This has to do with transportation, this has to do with stipends, this has to do with housing, and I would work with them to demand this from the Stanford administration. Second is a safe and equitable workspace. Third are benefits that are necessary in order to have healthy and safe lives at Stanford. And lastly is to help international grad students who face particular difficulties. As I mentioned, we're completely in support of the Graduate Workers Union, and we want to advocate on behalf of those communities with them in mind.
Alright, so now we're going to be going into our second category, which will be clubs, funding, and administration. So our first question tonight will be, this year, the ASSU rejected a record high number of VSO annual grant applications, following a record year of grant requests. In your view, what are the most significant problems facing the ASSU funding system, and what changes would you push for to address these problems? Sophia, we'll start with you.
Club funding is very near and dear to my heart. I've run a student organization over the past year, and club funding is an incredibly difficult process. My sister applied for a club that has consistent membership of 30 people at each meeting. Their club application just got rejected. And my best friend runs Kids with Dreams, which is an organization that has been on campus for about a decade serving children with intellectual disabilities, and they just got completely defunded for absolutely no reason. And the reason for this is that there are unclear funding guidelines. The ASSU penalizes clubs for being too frugal, which is ridiculous, and the entire Stanford network is not supportive of new student initiatives and new student community building, and clubs are the core of that. So I would spend my time advocating for more clear funding guidelines, for making sure that the club process is equitable and transparent, and making sure that Stanford overall puts funding to support the initiatives that students actually want.
Yeah, so two things. One thing is working with the administration and talking with different departments that's going to be able to allocate funding for clubs that are relevant and under the purview of each department is something that I'm definitely looking to advocate for next year, and bring that to the budget process meetings, and making sure that advocates, that administration are hearing the advocacy in that front. As well as I have taken the time to meet with some of the clubs who were defunded or were not able to obtain that funding, and I heard what they had to say, and I listened to what their recommendations would be had they had a different chance in the process. And so definitely there was a lack of clarity, a lack of communication, and just an overall misunderstanding of how funding works with annual grants, and what's eligible criteria, what's not eligible criteria, and how that should be accessible for all students to understand, and there should be better office hours and better communication in that respect. So, thank you.
Finally, Amira.
Yeah, so there's a lot of problems that go on with funding on this campus, and I think one of the greatest ones is administration is not buying in. The ASSU has funded clubs, and the student activities fee, which all students pay, is the reason that we're able to fund them. But it's not sustainable for students to continue to pay at inflationary rates that are insane every single year going forward. The administration needs to start buying into these initiatives and supporting them. For example, with club sports, when they expand, they add an entire team. They need an entirely new budget, and that's not something that can fit into a 5 to 7% increase that the ASSU can give. So administration in these cases needs to start supporting students on campus, start paying into these funds, because if they don't support, then we're just simply not going to be able to have students have all of the fun experiences they want, because students won't be able to afford it.
Moving on to the next question. The ultimate authority over the ASSU and all student fees lies with the student body and its elected representatives. Despite this, the actual disbursement of funds for student groups, as well as the approval of new clubs, are managed by unelected administrators. Is that an issue to you? All right. Christian, we'll start with you.
Can you repeat the question?
Yes, I'll repeat it one more time.
Yeah, please. Thank you.
The ultimate authority over the ASSU and all student fees lies with the student body and its elected representatives. Despite this, the actual disbursement of funds for student groups, as well as the approval of new clubs, are managed by unelected administrators. Is that an issue to you?
The handling of the funds by unelected officials that are administrators is problematic, yes. Having student input and having students present at the table, especially if we're looking at club leaders, or having some type of workshop where student leaders are at the table being able to discuss what funding looks like, how it's being dispersed, and how students can gain access to these funds, is definitely something that is needed. And so working with the administration to make sure that they know this and they hear this, and students are at the table when these conversations are being had, is going to be crucial to making sure that funding is dispersed appropriately.
Sophia, you're next.
Admin oversight is definitely a huge problem, and it's definitely contributing to this issue. Clearly, they don't understand what students want, as evidenced by the neighborhood system or a million other changes that have been put in place since my freshman year. And lots of clubs that want to join and have student membership are not being supported by admin. So yes, I think that there's a huge role for students to play in that. But I do also know that admin doesn't control all of it, and student funding for clubs came from ASSU. And ASSU is the one that over the past year cut Kids with Dreams. ASSU is the one that cut in half club sports. And a lot of this comes from student input. That doesn't mean that every individual ASSU senator is responsible, but it means that there need to be better systems in place to support ASSU senators to make clear funding decisions. There need to be clear outlines of how to get funding. There need to be clear processes in order to get funding and make sure that that actually happens. So yes, it has to do with admin, and a larger issue is admin not supporting what students actually want on campus, but the issue is multifaceted and needs to be responded to at all levels.
And lastly, Amira.
Yeah, so Stanford Student Enterprises is the partner branch for the ASSU. That's where these admin are coming in. They're actual accountants, they're actual people who know how funding works and go through that. They're the reason that we get trained in funding, and they're actually extremely helpful. But our relationship with them does need work. We need more collaboration with them. We need to have more trainings with them, and they need to have more we need to have more input in everything they're doing. But I want to be very clear, when SSE disperses funds, they only do so after the legislative bodies approve it. They're not doing it on their own. I want that to be very, very clear, first of all. Also, I want to go into the collaboration a little bit more. SSE has CAP group, they deal with reimbursements, and it's all a very complicated process, but at the bottom line, we all need to collaborate more and continue to have these trainings with one another so that we're aligned in what we're doing. When they have office hours, they can also be helpful. We can have more support for students.
On to the next question. The Committee of 12, or C12, has proposed a study on the inclusion of academic proctors and exams, which would mark a significant shift in Stanford's long-standing policies and practices. What are your thoughts on the inclusion of exam proctors or the C12's recommendations more broadly? Amira?
Yeah, so I've been working with the C12 since last year this time, and they've been asking us about proctoring for a very long time, and my stance has always been against it. I don't think that students should be proctored in their classrooms immediately. I think we need to take careful steps before we make an insane shift like that, because we haven't had that for decades. And the fact that Stanford has trust in their students in their classrooms is a really important decision to change. So with the C12, they're actually offering up a study where they'll do proctoring in some classes and others to learn of the effects of it. It can be mentally scary to have a proctor in the room. There can be racial profiling when a proctor is in the room. And it's very important that this decision is made clearly. We're looking at the C12's recommendations tomorrow in the Senate. We're going to actually look into whether or not we're going to approve them. In my mind, it's only going to be approved if the study shows that proctoring doesn't have a negative effect on students, and that students at the end of the study get buy-in and have to approve it.
I think that proctors are just one small part of a larger issue that Stanford faces. I don't think that students need proctors. I think we can all see that there's probably not like an epidemic of cheating on this campus, but it's part of a larger issue that the C12 is supposed to address, which is admin litigiousness over student needs. A lot of you probably read an article that came out recently about student organizations that were trying to put on events and how the admin actively pursues them and creates a campus culture of fear that makes it difficult to throw events. There's also things like the alcohol policy, which are a symptom of admin being litigious over student needs, rather than supporting students in the ways that they choose to grow on campus as college students. So proctoring is a small part of what I see as a way larger issue to do with SGAP and other processes and the judicial process, which is overly punitive towards students and not supporting students' growth at a time where that's honestly crucial.
Christian?
Yeah, so I've also been a part of the conversations for the C12 proposal, and studies have shown that proctoring can be problematic for students because it creates fear, it creates a level of worthiness within the classroom, and it gives students it kind of puts students in a position that would probably make them cheat, and then it puts other students in the way that the structure is currently, it sets up students to tell on other students, and I don't think people are in the classroom to look at what other people are doing. They're focused on their work, they're focused on what they're trying to do, and having a proctor, having somebody in the classroom, especially when there's been years without it, would definitely be would definitely be difficult for students to get adjusted to over time. And so I feel that just going through the recommendations and understanding what they are and looking at the study that the CFOC has done will be beneficial for this.
On to our last question for this category. In 2020, the Leland-Stanford Junior Marching Band was restructured from being a VSO with elected leadership to a department-affiliated student organization under Stanford Athletics. Some members of band leadership have criticized the new structure and have called the band to move back to their previous status as a VSO. Do you see a role for the ASSU in ensuring student organizations are student-run? Sophia, we'll start with you.
Definitely. I think this is one amazing thing that the ASSU has done this year. If student fees are going towards supporting student organizations, then they should be student-led with funding that is dictated by students. It shouldn't be the case that student organizations are unfunded and then organizations run by Stanford are receiving student funding. We've read op-eds in the Daily and heard from many members of the band that the band is just not supporting students like they used to. You all remember what the band was when we applied to Stanford. It was super fun, it was attractive for students, and it was exactly what the Stanford culture was supposed to be. But now it's just representative of exactly what Stanford has become. Admin oversight, killing student spirit, and not making Stanford a place that is driven by what students want. So ASSU definitely has a role to play in making sure that students lead the organizations that are receiving student funding and want to be student-led.
Yeah, that is one of the things I'm most proud of this year, is that the ASSU, the undergraduate senate, we work to make sure that the band is student-run. The fact that their finances are up in the air of whether or not the band director, who's an administrator, is using them without the treasurer's permission is absolutely absurd, which is why we are auditing them, which is why we are investigating them, to make sure that that is not the case. Beyond that, we are making it so that if they are getting ASSU funding, they have to be student-run. They have to elect their treasurer, they have to elect their president, they have to elect their VP. That is something we did this year, and I'm extremely proud of it. The band is for students, and it should be student-run, and the ASSU is making sure of that.
We'll end up with you.
Yeah, I think it's horrible that just kind of in line with what's been going on over the recent months with the band, and having the band be student run is going to definitely be beneficial for the culture on campus, social life, and having them obtain student funding to be the organization that it needs to be to host the events it needs to have, and to bring a little bit of life back to the campus, because coming to Stanford, I had no context of what social life is and or anything like that. So when the first time I saw the band, I was a little taken back, because it was just kind of like out of the box, fun and crazy, and then to kind of see that diminish over time, it was kind of a little disheartening. But I do commend the undergraduate senate for the work they did to help make the band become student run again.
We'll be moving on to our final category for today, which will be social life and safety. Our first question for this category: Greek life is a divisive issue on campus. Some students have called for its abolition, while others, such as many of those who say that Stanford hates fun, advocate that Greek organizations should have more freedom and leeway from administrators. How do you plan to balance supporting social life at Stanford while also providing a welcoming environment to all students? Amira, we'll start off with you.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that we can do to help social life is to empower RAs. Row RAs, Frosh RAs, all of the RAs, ethnic theme dorm RAs, all of them are the reason that we have such amazing events on campus, why we have parties, why we have neighborhood events in general. And empowering RAs to actually know how to use funding, how to host events, is very important to creating a great culture on this campus and to supporting the students that are in them. I think if we can do that, then Stanford will go back to the fun and quirky way it used to be, and we can have really safe, amazing events for everyone.
Yeah, so in some of these dining hall tours that I've been on, I've heard a lot of abolish Greek, and I've heard the opposite as well. And so there has to be a balance. And you know, saying abolish Greek life is probably not the most advantageous thing, because it benefits a lot of people on campus. It creates a robust social life, if you will. And so I feel like working on alcohol policies and advocating with administrators to changing the closed door policies and having them more open door, and working with RAs and giving them the proper training, or putting the proper people in place who can deal with situations such as transports and things like that, to help make campus a little bit more safe and a little bit more fun for everybody, I think is going to be crucial, and as well as creating substance-free options, which the Office of Student Engagement has done a great job of creating substance-free events, as well as the Well House and the Well Buddies, and a lot of people who have been in that space, and making sure that there's a social life for everybody.
Students crave community, and Stanford has honestly destroyed that option for a lot of people. It's not unclear why people are attracted to Greek life. It's because students want this community, and they find that there in a house with a group of people that they're excited to have fun with. Stanford policies make Greek life the only option for a lot of people, which is why we want to reform the system to make it such that Stanford has a fun and inclusive social scene that is available, accessible, and inclusive for everyone. Our policy and our plan includes detailed instructions for how to make this possible. And there are a few things that come to mind that would solve this problem for a lot of students on campus. First is stopping all of the restrictions that make it so difficult to throw events. Greek clubs have organized teams that can throw events and deal with these restrictions. Other people can't. 2 is expanding funding for clubs. 3 is bringing back row themes that made the rows special and fun for students. 4 is making neighborhood funding actually accessible to build a community. And lastly is expanding Cardinal Nights to have substance-free options on campus for students.
Title IX issues are a center of student advocacy on campus. What do you see as the ASSU role in Title IX advocacy, and what, if anything, would you advocate for if elected? Starting with Christian.
Yeah, so I've been in a couple of meetings with Sheriff Title IX and had these conversations, and bringing awareness to the processes that are involved, especially with that have to do with like reporting sexual harassment and rebuilding the trust that Sheriff Title IX should have with the student body, and making sure that students have that ability to feel safe and they have somewhere to turn. And so working with the administration and Sheriff Title IX to make sure that they're making aware and being transparent in the processes and the status of a lot of the reporting that's going on, I think would also be advantageous. And just again, I'm going to go back to rebuilding the trust and working with the administration and specifically with Sheriff Title IX to make sure that they're clear and they're intentional about how they make these processes aware for students and how trustworthy it is.
Thank you, Christian. Amira,
yeah, so this year I've been working a lot with Title IX, and we've seen a lot of strides in that area. And we're actually coming up on a really crucial moment in our Stanford history where Biden is about to release his new Title IX guidelines, which means the Title IX office has to restructure. It gives us a perfect opportunity to actually make change at the school. So I have 4 things I want to see. A transparent faculty harassment investigation, having support and legal counsel from the minute somebody reports and needs support. More accommodations for survivors, be it academic, be it medical, be it housing. And lastly is instituting Flip the Script, which is EAAA, which is a 90% reduction in rape and sexual assault for women. That is a proven research-based program that Stanford does a terrible job of advertising, and having that here will actually help people get away from these terrible systems that are hurting them and continue to perpetuate rape culture on this campus.
A lot of what Amira said. Actually, we have a lot of the same policies in mind of how to address sexual violence on this campus. I personally have dealt with sexual violence on this campus numerous times, and I know how going through the Title IX process can be taxing and difficult and unhelpful for victims. That's why I want to take common step solutions to fix this. First, I think there needs to be more campus safety, which involves expanding blue lights, making sure that 5-Sure is expanded to provide students a safe way home, as well as expanding and advertising Flip the Script, a program Amira talked about that has been proven to reduce sexual violence on campus and help survivors. I also think we need to audit the Title IX office. Clearly it's not doing what it should do to support victims of sexual violence on campus, and someone needs to take an outside look to make sure that they're doing what students need them to do. I also think this is a result of a larger problem on Stanford's campus, where we've created a culture that's unsafe by limiting social options to very, very few places. Frosh go out, and they think the only place they can go is to a frat party. And it should be the case that Cardinal Nights is expanded, more opportunities should exist for going out, and people should have communities that support them to make sure that they have a safe time at Stanford.
Moving on to the next question. With the reports of Black and Latinx vehicle operators being stopped at disproportionate rates by the Stanford University Department of Public Safety and concerns relating to increased police presence and surveillance on campus, what is your plan to address concerns relating to public safety? Christian, we'll start with you.
So working with the Department of Safety, I feel that having their presence on campus is like a double-edged sword. Having them on campus ensures that their safety, but then there's also the possibility of incidents that happened like back a couple months ago. And so having a process in which students can be discussing what they feel, what they see, what's going on, especially in light of incidents like that on campus, and being able to speak into those and having more mental health professionals available and accessible when moments like these are going on, and having trained professionals outside of law enforcement available to deal with situations like this, especially when the situation arises.
Thank you. Sophia?
I think that all communities need to feel safe and included on campus, and obviously police plays a large role in how students feel about their own safety on campus. But I think that solution shouldn't come from me. I think it should come from the communities that are most directly affected by it, which is why I, as ASSU, or in my role, hopefully, as ASSU exec, I would listen directly to what these students want and involve them in the process of talking to admin about what they need. I don't want to advocate blankly on their behalf. I want to take the time to encourage them and give them the space to advocate for what they know they need for their own community.
Students have been saying for decades here that police do not ensure their safety. They actually harm it. And having police officers on campus at will to do whatever they want is not something that we need. I've listened to students. What do they want? They want to reinvest into our community centers. They want super to have more expansive drug and alcohol policies and be able to support students. They want a crisis response team that doesn't have police handle mental health crises. They want to get rid of all of the surveillance expansion that they're doing on campus. Those are the things that students have been saying they wanted for decades, and as an ASSU executive, I will make sure that that conversation is the one we're having with the Community Board of Public Safety, with MTL, with PERSIS. Thank you.
We'll be moving on to our last question of the night. Fizz claims that 95% of Stanford undergraduates have downloaded their anonymous social media platform. How do you feel the addition of Fizz influences campus dialogue, and is it a positive addition to campus? Amira, we'll start with you.
I love that I'm the first one to go. I think Fizz is, again, a double-edged sword. With anonymous apps, there's always an opportunity for people to be harmful and for cyberbullying to occur, for lies to spread, and that is harmful. And I'm hoping that Fizz is able to create spaces that don't do that. But I also think it has created this movement. We see, like, Stanford Hates Fun was created on Fizz and has expanded very vastly. And I think that's something that we should reckon with. The fact that it's a place where people feel safe to express themselves and to talk about issues on campus they might not say in real life. So it's really a double-edged sword. I think it does benefit, but we need to make sure we're cognizant of its harms too.
Sophia?
I honestly think Fizz has been great. It's been a platform where students can actually share what's going on campus and can discuss with each other in ways that they weren't able to before and often aren't able to now because of a lack of community and interconnectivity on campus. Fizz has said that Stanford Hates Fun. Fizz has said that admin has overtaken student social life and student community building. We need to listen to what students say, and thank God that there's a platform where students can actually share how they feel and mobilize to action. So maybe there are some negative things that happen on that platform. There will be on all platforms, but I'm so grateful that there is a place where students can share how they actually feel, and I'm hoping to run to amplify exactly those voices and perspectives that students share on that app.
I myself am not a user of Fizz. I'm Android gang over here, so I'm sorry, iPhone folks. I get into it with y'all all the time, but but to be serious, Fizz has been like, it has been a way for students to share what's really, and I'm just kind of reiterating what folks have already said. It creates a narrative for folks that wouldn't normally walk around campus saying in fear of, right? Because you can't walk around saying certain things at certain times, and so Fizz allows folks to have that opportunity to say what they feel, say what they think, and share what's going on campus. And is there room for lies and misinformation and all that? Of course, it happens on social media with unanonymous people, right? So I mean, who's to say that an anonymous platform wouldn't allow for the same thing? But I think Fizz has been a great use for us as students to be able to share, and as well for us to understand what's going on campus.
Thank you, candidates. Now will we move on to closing statements. Each candidate will have 60 seconds, and we will go in reverse order from opening statements, starting with Christian.
I've been working really hard this past year, building partnerships with administration, working on various issues that, frankly, coming from community college, I didn't experience there, considering that they're commuter schools. So being at a school where folks are really close-knit and seeing what communities look like and seeing the problems that lie within those structures and helping reframe what they look like for students and getting the student input is definitely something that I'm advocating for. I'm advocating for a better social life, a better safety plan, a better community engagement. And so as your ASSU president, I would work to make sure that I'm listening to all students, whether it's my belief or not. I feel that all students need to be advocated for, and they need to be advocated for appropriately. Thank you.
Sophia?
Stanford is just not the place it used to be. It's not the place that students were promised. It's not the place that a lot of us experienced before the pandemic, and it's not the place that we want anymore. Students are consistently upset, and they've shared that time and time again with Stanford administration, and literally nothing is done to stop it. I want to run for ASSU because I actually want to solve the issues that I've seen plague this place and plague the communities that I've been a part of over the past 4 years. And I want to represent these communities and make common sense, in-depth, thoughtful solutions to the problems that plague our campus. I want to make sure that every student feels like they have a voice on campus, feels like they have a community, and feels like Stanford is the place where they want to go to school and feel supported. I would encourage you to read our platform. It's really in-depth and has a lot of solutions on how to stop this. And overall, I just want to bring fun and excitement and community and inclusivity back to this campus. And I think Kyle and I are the perfect people to do that.
Aiden and I have been doing this for the last 3 years. Since we were in Frosh Council, Frosh Year, we have been fighting for our fellow students to make things happen on this campus, and we've done it. We've brought back the Shopping Express, we've helped survivors, we have done so many things on this campus to make it a better place, and we're going to continue to do it. If you elect us, you will see the solutions that we have come up with come to fruition. We will have a fun campus, we will have a safe campus, we will have an inclusive campus. All of that is something we have prided ourselves on for the last 3 years, and we'll pride ourselves on for next year too. Thank you.
That was all the questions we have prepared today. We thank the candidates for their time in joining us for this debate, and thank you all for attending. This has been Janelle, Olisea,
And Mark Allen.
with Stanford Daily. Good night.